Okay, I've got the other case half bolted down and torqued. The 7/16 bolts, this one here is actually torqued to 50 foot-pounds is what G-Force recommends. They actually wrote on this case. The tail shaft housing is torqued to 40 foot-pounds, and then the 3/8 bolts on the corners are torqued to 30 foot-pounds, and then the 5/16 torqued to 20 foot-pounds. So those are all torqued down. Lines are lined up, or the case halves are lined up pretty good. So now I've lubed up the seal with a little bit of grease, and I've added silicone. I like this stuff right here, this Ultra Gray from Permatex. It actually cleans up nicely, and it seals good, and it's just easy to work with. So I coat that pretty good. It's kind of hard to know how much is the right amount, because it usually squishes out more than you think it will, but line that up. Then you also want to coat your bolts with some too, because lube will come out through the threads, and then you end up with oil in your bell housing or running down the face of it. So once you get all these tightened down, I don't use a torque wrench on these. I just kind of crank them on by hand with an Allen wrench till they're as tight as I feel is necessary, I guess. I normally snug them a little, and then I'll give it a little time to kind of set up, and then I'll tighten them the rest of the way. And you can already see there's silicone squeezing out evenly all the way around, which I like to see. And then I'll usually wipe that off so that corner is clear. So now we'll move on to the tail shaft housing. This is the same. It's got an O-ring. Same as the case half. When I talked to G-Force about it, they recommended I use silicone along with it, because they say if you just use the O-ring, they will leak. So that's what I do, and I go around the bolts, the bolt holes, and then, except this one, because this one just goes through, so there's no chance of fluid coming out of there. But and again, I lube that up with a little bit of grease, the actual O-ring itself. And same here on these lower two, you have to add a little bit of silicone to them. But basically, the assembly is complete. Once I torque this on to 40 foot-pounds, it'll be done. Okay, so now I'm all done torquing all the bolts, tightening these up, and then I take a rag and I wipe all the extra silicone out from around the edge so it can seat nice and flush with the face of the bell housing. I also have all the silicone cleaned off here, but before I bolted the bell housing, I take a little fresh silicone and I just put it around there, just so there's an extra little bit of seal there between it and the bell housing. It shouldn't leak, but I suppose that may help if it's gonna. The back's all torqued on, so everything's complete. G-Force GF5R. I've got my old clutchless sliders here that I'll hang on to, and maybe down the road I'll change it back over. One more thing I wanted to mention is that on the 1-2 clutchless slider assembly, where it slides on the 1-2 hub, it's a solid hub, and you can just, you can slide this right off the hub when you disassemble the transmission. Now the 3-4 is different. The 3-4 has 3 pins, 3 roll pins. There's 3 holes drilled around the diameter of the hub in the center, and these pins are sticking up, and they locate in little pockets in there, so that your slider stays centered on that hub at all times, except for when you shift, and then this one stays in the center and this one moves over. If you're going from 3rd to 4th, obviously this will be on 3rd, and then this will move over to 4th, and then once 4th engages, this will snap back to the neutral position. These pins will stop it from coming all the way back over to meet this half like it does on the 1-2 side. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but part of the design. So if you're going to change sliders on the clutchless model, if that's what you have, then what you have to do is, I took 1/4-inch pins and I just spread these apart on the hub. You just take the whole hub and slider assembly out, set it on the bench, and put these 3 pins in there, spread it apart, put them in there so that they're held apart like this. Then you can take a punch and you can knock these roll pins into the center of the slider hub. And once you knock those free, then you can just spread it apart. All your pins will fall out, and you slide this off the hub. So I didn't include that in the video. It was already done before I started reassembling it with my clutch assisted sliders. So I figured I'd bring that up. And then here's the snap ring pliers that I used. These are real heavy duty, and that's what you need for these transmissions, because the rings are really tough, really thick. So expect to pay some money for these. You can't get a cheap set because they'll just bend. So I hope this has been informative, and don't be afraid to take your G-Force GF5R apart.